Farrell's Caddie by John Updike is read by Charles Keating.
When Farrell signed up with 7 other aging members of his local Long Island club for a week of golf at the Royal Caledonian Links in Scotland, he didn't foresee the relationship with the caddies. Hunched little men in billed tweed caps and rubberized rain suits, they huddled in the misty gloom as the morning foursomes got organized and reclustered after lunch, muttering as unintelligibly as sparrows for the day's second 18. Farrell would never have played 36 holes a day in America, let alone walked the distance. But here in Scotland, golf was not an accessory to life, drawing upon one's marginal energy. It was life, played out of the center of one's being. At first, stepping forth on legs, one of which had been broken in a college football game 40 years before, and which damp weather or a night of twisted sleep still provoked to a reminiscent twinge, he missed the silky glide and swerve of the accustomed electric cart, its magic carpet suspension above the whispering fairway. He missed the rattle of spare balls in the retaining shelf and the round plastic holes to hold drinks, alcoholic or carbonated, and the friendly presence on the seat beside him of another gray-haired sportsman, another warty pickle blanching in the brine of time, exuding forbearance and the expectation of forbearance, and resigned, like Farrell, to a gulfing mediocrity that would gradually make its way down the sloping dog leg of decrepitude to the level green of death. Here, however, on the heather-rimmed fairways, cut as close as putting surfaces back home, yet with no trace of mower tracks, and cheerfully marred by the scratchings and burrows of the nocturnal rabbits that lived and bred beneath the impenetrably thorny, waist-high gorse, energy came up through the turf as if Farrell's cleats were making contact with primal spirits beneath the soil, and he felt he could walk forever. The rolling and treeless terrain, the proximity of the wind-whipped sea, the rain that came and went with the suddenness of thought, composed the ancient matrix of the game, and the darkly muttering caddies were also a part of this matrix. That first morning, in the drizzly shuffle around the golf bags, his bag was hoisted up by a hunched shadow who, as they walked together in pursuit of Farrell's first drive, a good contact but pulled to the left toward some shaggy mounds, muttered half to himself with those hiccups or glottal stops the Scots accent inserts, "Sandy's what they call me." Farrell hesitated and then confessed, Gus. His given name, Augustus, had always embarrassed him, but its shortened version seemed a little short on dignity. And at the office, as he had ascended in rank, his colleagues had settled on his initials, A.D. "Here, you want to get over the second bush frae the left," Sandy said, handing Farrell a 7-iron. The green was out of sight behind the shaggy mounds, which were covered with long tan grass that whitened in waves as gusts flattened it. "Watch the distance." Farrell was accustomed to yardage markers, yellow stakes, or sprinkler heads. The caddy looked reflectively at a sand bunker not far off, and then at the winking red signal light on the train tracks beyond, and finally at a large bird, a gull or a crow, winging against the wind beneath the low, tattered blue-black clouds. 138 to the edge of the green, near 150 to the pin, where they hit. I can't hit a 7-iron 150. I can't hit it even 140 against this wind. Yet the caddy's fist in a fingerless wool glove did not withdraw the offered club. "Seven's what you need." As Farrell bent his face to the ball, the wet wind cut across his eyes and made him cry. His tears turned the ball into 2. He supposed the brighter one was real. He concentrated on taking the club head away slowly and low, initiating his downswing with a twitch of the left hip and suppressing his tendency to dip the right shoulder. The shot seemed sweet, soaring with a gentle draw up precisely over the second bush. He looked toward the caddie, expecting congratulations or at least some small sign of shared pleasure. But the man, his creased face weathered, the strangely even brown of a white actor playing Othello, followed the flight of the ball as he had that of the crow, reflectively. "Your right hand's a wee bit froward," he observed. And the ball, they saw as they climbed to the green, was indeed pulled to the left in a deep pot bunker. Furthermore, it was 15 yards short. The caddie had underclubbed him, but showed no sign of remorse as he handed Farrell the sand wedge. In Sandy's dyed-looking face, pallid grey eyes showed like touches of morning light. It shocked Farrell to realize that the other man, weathered though he was, and bent beneath the weight of a perpetual golf bag, was younger than himself, a prematurely wizened Celt or Pict, serving one of Northeast America's tall, bloated Anglo-Saxons. The side of the bunker toward the hole was as tall as Farrell and sheer, built up of bricks of sod in a way never seen at Long Island courses. Rattled, irritated at having been unrepentantly underclubbed, Farrell swung 5 times into the damp brown sand, darker than any sand on Long Island. With each swing, the ball thudded beneath the trap's high lip and dribbled back at his feet. "Hit at it well behind," the caddie advised. "And dare stop the club." Farrell's 6th swing brought the ball bobbling up onto the green within 6 feet of the hole. His fellow Americans lavished ironical praise on the shot, but the caddie, with deadpan solemnity, handed him his putter. "A ball to the left," he advised. And Farrell was so interested in this peculiar phrase, the ball as a unit of measure, that his putt stopped short. "You forgot to hit it, Gus," Sandy told him. Farrell tersely nodded. Tingling with nervousness, he felt on stage and obliged to keep up a show of the stoic virtues. Asked for his score, he said loudly in a theatrical voice, "That was an honest 10. "We'll call it a 6, said the player, keeping score in the forgiving American way. As the round progressed, through a rapid alternation of brisk showers and silvery sunshine, with rainbows springing up around them and tiny white daisies gleaming underfoot, Farrell and his caddie began to grow into each other as a foot in damp weather grows into a shoe. Sandy consistently handed Farrell a club too short to make the green, but Farrell came to accept the failure as his. His caddie was handing the club to the stronger golfer latent in Farrell, and it was Farrell's job to let this superior performer out, to release him from his stiff, soft, more than middle-aged body. On the 12th hole, called Dunrobin, a seemingly endless par 5 with a broad stretch of fairway, bleak and vaguely restless like the surface of the moon, receding over a distant edge marked by 2 small pot bunkers and a pale green arm of gorse that extended from the rabbit undermined thickets on the left, his drive clicked. Something about the ghostly emptiness of this particular hole's terrain, the featurelessness of it, removed Farrell's physical inhibitions. He felt the steel shaft of the driver bend in an elastic curve at his back, and a corresponding springiness awaken in his knees, and knew, as his weight smoothly moved from the right foot to the left, that he would bring the club face squarely into the ball, and indeed did, so that the ball, The last of his new titleists, the others having disappeared in gorse and heather and cliffside scree, was melting into the drizzle straight ahead almost before he looked up. His head held sideways, as if pillowed on his right ear, just like the heads of the pros on television. "Okay?" he asked Sandy, mock modest, but also genuinely fearful of some hazard, some trick of the layout that he had missed taking into account. "Bonny shot, sir," the cabbie said, and his face, as if touched by a magic wand, crumpled into a smile full of crooked grey teeth, his constantly relit cigarette adhering to one corner. Small matter that Farrell, striving for a repetition of this scarcely precedented distance, topped the following 3-wood, hit a 5-iron frat, and sculled his wedge shot clear across the elevated green. He had, for a second, awakened the golf giant sleeping among his muscles, and imagined himself vindicated in the other man's not quite colourless, not quite indifferent eyes. Dinner for this week of excursion was a repeating male event. The same 8 Long Island males, their hair growing curly and their faces ruddy, away from the dry Manhattan canyons and air-conditioned compartments where they had accumulated their little fortunes. They discussed their caddies as men extremely unbuttoned might discuss their mistresses. "Come on, Freddie, hit it for once," the very distinguished banker, Frederick R. Panoply, boasted his had cried out to him in frustration as, on the 3rd day of his cautious, down-the-middle banker's game, he painstakingly addressed his ball. Another man's caddy, when asked what he thought of Mrs. Thatcher, had responded with a twinkle, "Oh, she'd be a good hump." Farrell, prim and reserved by nature, had relatively little to offer of his caddy. He worried about the man's incessant smoking and whether at the end of a round he tipped him too much less than what a Japanese golfer would have given. As the week went by, their relationship had become more intuitive. "A 6-iron, Farrell would now say, and without a word would be handed the club. Once he had dared decline an offered 6 and asked for the 5, and sailed his unusually well-struck shot into the sedge beyond the green. On the greens, where he at first had been bothered by the caddie's explicit directives so that he forgot to stroke the ball firmly, he had come to depend upon Sandy's advice and would expertly tilt his ear close to the caddie's mouth and try to envisage the curve of the ball into the center of the hole from 1 inch and a fingernail to the left. Farrell began to sink putts. He began to get pars. As the whitecaps flashed on one side of the links, and on the other the wine-red electric commuter train swiftly glided up to Glasgow and back. This was happiness. And on this wasteland between the tracks and the beach, and freedom of a wild and windy sort. On the morning of his last day, having sliced his first drive into the edge of the rough between a thistle and what appeared to be a child's weathered tombstone, Farrell bent his ear close to the caddie's mouth for advice and heard, "You'd better be leaving her." "Beg pardon?" Farrell said, as he had all week, when the glottal, hiccuping accent had become opaque. Today, the acoustics were especially bad. A near gale off the sea was making his rain pants rattle like machine guns and deformed his eyeballs with air pressure as he tried to squint down. When he could stop seeing double, his lie looked fair, semi-embedded. "Your missus," Sandy clarified, passing over the 8-iron. "It's too late, man. She was never your type. Too proper." "Shouldn't this be a wedge?" Farrell asked uncertainly. "Nay, Is sitting up good enough? The caddie said, pressing his foot into the heather behind the ball so it rose up like ooze out of mud. You can reach with the 8, he said. Go for your par. Your faults are all in your mind. You tend to play defensive. Farrell would have dismissed his previous remarks as a verbal mirage amid the clicks and skips of wind-blown Scots had they not seemed so uncannily true. Too proper was exactly what his college friends had said of Sylvia, but he had imagined that her physical beauty had been the real thing, and her propriety a pose that she would outgrow, whereas 35 married years had revealed the propriety as enduring and the beauty as transient. As to leaving her, this thought would never have entered his head until recently. The mergers and acquisitions branch had recently taken on a certain Irma Feingold, with heavy-lidded eyes, full lips painted sharply red, and a curious, presumptuous way of teasing Farrell in the eddies of chit-chat before and after a conference. She had recently been divorced, and when she talked to Farrell, she tapped her lower lip with a pencil eraser and shimmied her shoulders beneath their pads. On nights when the office worked late, he liked occasionally to demonstrate that, far along though he was, he could still pull an all-nighter with the young bucks. There had been, between him and Irma, shared Chinese meals from greasy take-out cartons, and a shared limo home in the dawn of light. On one undreamed-of occasion, there had even been an invitation, which he did not refuse, to interrupt his return to Long Island with an hour at her apartment in Brooklyn. The 8-iron pinched the ball clean, and the Atlantic gale brought the soaring shot left to right toward the pin. Left edge, but dinna gie the hole away, Sandy advised of the putt, and Farrell sank it for the first birdie of his week of golf. Now, suddenly, out of the silvery torn sky, sleet and sunshine descended simultaneously, and as the two men walked at the same tilt to the next tee, Sandy's voice came out of the wind. And steer clear of the mini-cord deal. They've leveraged the company to death. Farrell studied Sandy's face. Rain and sleet bounced off the brown skin as if from a waxy preservative coating. Metallic gleams showed as the man surveyed through narrowed eyelids the watery horizon. Farrell pretended he hadn't heard. On the tee, he was handed a 3-wood with the advice: you want to stay short of the wee bairn. The wind's come around behind, bringing the sun with it. And as the round wore on, the sun did struggle through, and a thick rainbow planted itself over the profile of the drab town beyond the tracks, with its soot-black steeples and distillery chimneys. By the time of the afternoon's 18, there was actually blue sky and oblique solar rays. Pockets of lengthening shadows showed the old course to be everywhere, curvaceous, crest and swale, like the body of a woman. 40 feet off the green on the 14th, Winnie Bray, Farrell docilely accepted the caddie's offer of a putter and rolled it up and over the close-mowed irregularities to within a gimme of the hole. His old self would have sculled or fluffed a chip. Great advice, he said, and in his flush of triumph challenged the caddie. But Irma loves the mini-cord deal. Aye. It keeps the twa of you together. She's fearful you'll wander off i' the halls of corporate power. But whatever does she see in me? Looking for a further, the case may be. That first husband of hers was mickle immature, and also far from your own income bracket. Farrell felt his heart sink at the deflating shrewdness of the analysis. His mind elsewhere, absented by bittersweet sorrow, he hit one pure shot after another. Looking to the Caddie for praise, however, he met the same impassive, dour, young-old visage, opaque beneath the billed tweed cap. Tomorrow the man would caddy for someone else, and Farrell would be belted into a business-class seat within a 747. On the home stretch of holes, one after the other strung out along the tracks as the Victorian brick clubhouse with its turrets and neo-Gothic arches drew closer and closer, Farrell begged for advice. The 5-wood or the 3-iron? The 3 keeps it down out of the wind, but I feel more confident with the wood, the way you've got me swinging. The 5 will be o'er and gone, you're a pumped up man. Take the 4-iron, smooth it on, laddie. Aim for the little broch. Broch? The wee stone fort. Gus, about taking early retirement. Oh, the severance deals won't be so sweet, You can free yourself up. Take on some consults for your spare change. That's just what I was thinking. If Irma's a will-o'-the-wisp. Will-o'-the-wisp, do you say? You're a speedy learner. Farrell felt flattered and wind-scoured. Here in this surging universe of green and grey. You think so, Sandy? I can see. You can tell about a man frae the way he golfs.